this next concept, channel flows, I think is a really helpful approach to think about marketing channels distribution. And the concept of channel flows is that there are certain activities that have to happen in order for the product to go from producer to consumer. So we've got physical possession, ownership, risking, negotiation, ordering, payment, financing, promotion, and I have them all displayed graphically here. So the idea is that if I am going to sell a can of peas, then we're talking about a marketing channel, so we're talking about my factory as the can of peas, and we're talking about the end user as the customer. So certainly the can of peas has to make it from my factory into the customer's cupboard. Somehow that has to happen. And then ownership has to happen because you need to own that can of peas before you can eat it, hopefully. Which is not the same thing as the physical product. For example, does anybody here drive a car? Do you have physical possession of the car? Yes, because you're driving it. Do you own it? No, the bank owns it. So again, difference between physical possession and ownership. Related to ownership is risk. What happens if there's a problem with the product? Somebody has to take care of that as it's making the process. There needs to be negotiation, which is a two-way channel of communication so that the customer and the producer can make that transaction show that we've got the differences in perceived value. And then the customer has to communicate the order to the producer and needs to pay for the producer or pay for the product. And then whether or not they pay with their own money or they get financing, perhaps both the manufacturer and the customer need financing. For example, if anybody's bought a car, you had to finance the car with a car loan, and the dealer that you bought it from probably had to finance the car inventory. So both of you were using finance to help manage that transaction. And then lastly, there's promotion or communication of the value from the producer to the consumer. So there's a couple of points. One is all of these things have to happen in order for the product to make it from producer to consumer. But the same company doesn't have to do all of it. And that gets into a couple of issues. The other thing I want to look at is, I don't know if you can see it on this, but this is a very sophisticated drawing here. You'll notice that physical possession, that arrow has a solid outline. All of the rest of the arrows, regardless of direction, have a dotted outline. Can anybody guess why that is? Because I ran out of ink, yes. Couldn't afford to make the lines all the way around. So why is that? What's the difference between physical possession and all of the other things? One of these is different than the other. Anybody? Bueller? Say again? Well, they all have to happen. But that was a good guess. Being that you're the, yeah. I couldn't hear you? Without possessing it, you can't do the rest of it? That's a variation on a theme. You still have to have all of them happen. Okay, I'll spill it. Physical possession is the only thing that deals with a tangible product. The rest of the flows are information, bits and bytes. And the reason that that's important is this whole digital revolution has fundamentally disrupted distribution channels. Recognizing that most of what happens is bits and bytes can be handled through information technology. And if your project is digital, say for example music, then even the physical possession can be handled digitally. Which leads to two college-level words that you can take home today and impress your friends. Disintermediation and re-intermediation. And what's happening, these just kind of describe the way disruption is happening in distribution. Disintermediation is describing when old distribution patterns become obsolete because they're no longer available. For example, who here gets a newspaper physically delivered to their place of residence every day? Okay, 1, 2. Who here consumes news every day? Okay, those are the marketing majors because I've done research on that. So if you don't get the physical paper, how can you possibly consume the news? Because you can get it online, right? And sometimes you don't even have to pay for it. So the idea is the whole publishing industry, the music industry, is been turned on its head because the traditional business model in publishing was that the physical product was really a distribution channel. It was a way of getting the information from one place to the other. And the business model was that the information was free, but you paid for the channel. So, you know, you paid for the book. The information in the book was free. You paid for an album, and the music on the album came at no extra charge. Well, that doesn't work anymore because distribution is free. Now we've got to figure out a way to monetize the actual information or the content. The other side of that coin is due to, again, just the changes of these flows are all electronic or can all be handled through information technology. There are new ways of reaching consumers that are being formed. For example, some of the online marketplaces like eBay and Etsy, what's it, Kickstarter? Just ways of Kickstarter is a way of arranging financing, crowdsourcing financing, and Etsy is a way of promoting and handling negotiations. Again, these are all ways of doing business that are relatively new. You can make the case that some of them are online analogs of existing patterns. For example, eBay is a flea market. We've always had flea markets, but eBay took it to the next level because of the information technology behind it. Okay. So the point is, all of these things have to happen. Not everybody has to, or no one business has to do everything. And in the world today, some companies are better at some stuff than others. So it makes sense to allow folks that are really good at something to specialize in something so that the overall channel can be more effective. Questions on flows? Just keep it flowing.